"Stay silent," they said at the party. But I spoke one line that changed everything. Allison Price stepped into the soft glow of the Ashwood Country Club's ballroom, the hush of the upscale event wrapping around her like a weighted shroud, her black flats pressed softly into the plush cream carpet. But the contrast between her quiet steps and the room's ornate elegance couldn't have been more pronounced. She wore a simple black apron tied at the waist, an outfit that spoke of last-minute duty rather than privilege. Tonight, she was a server, not a guest. Despite holding an environmental science degree, tonight wasn't about her expertise. It was about filling a gap left open by a friend who'd called out sick, and that stung more than she expected. The scent of cedar wood and faint traces of expensive cologne mingled in the air, while laughter and polite conversation flowed over polished glasses. Allison's hands trembled ever so slightly as she fingered the worn leather notebook tucked just under her arm. The edges were scuffed, and a small handwritten tab protruded from beneath the apron, Club Green Initiatives. It was a fragile hope folded inside that book, invisible to most, but vital to her. As she approached a cluster of guests to offer trays of hors d'oeuvres, a sudden sharp laugh sliced through the light chatter. Marissa, the event organizer, stood nearby and cast a sideways glance that felt like a spotlight. "Don't worry, Allison," Marissa said, her voice carrying over the guests with sugary authority. "Just stick to the script. No need for extra commentary." The command was clinical, almost rehearsed, but the meaning was clear. Allison's voice was not welcome here. Heads swiveled, a few lips pursed, some brows quirked with amusement or anticipation. Allison's cheeks flamed, the heat creeping far beyond embarrassment into something raw and exposed. They weren't looking at Allison for her ideas or knowledge. No, it was to make sure she stayed silent, invisible in her place, a distraction to be controlled. She forced a tight smile and clutched her notebook closer, as if it might shield her from the glare. Her mind flashed to the scribbled notes inside, details about waste reduction, local food sourcing, sustainable packaging, all ideas meant to spark change. But here, in this room of polished etiquette and whispered judgments, those pages seemed like a secret no one cared to discover. Despite everything, Allison took a slow breath, steadying herself. She took a step forward, poised to deliver a tray, when a small, nearly imperceptible slip caught her attention. A faint disarray in the polished stack of menus on the nearby table. One menu's corner curled, revealing a tiny typed note barely visible beneath. "Green proposals due by midnight." It was subtle, tucked away, but in that crowded moment, it felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent water. Her fingers grazed the note as she served a glass of sparkling water to a guest. The room's chatter buzzed louder around her. A quiet tension throbbed beneath the surface, as if waiting for something or someone to rise above the scripted roles. For now, though, Allison remained on the edge, silent, underestimated, but holding tightly to the possibility that her one line might yet change everything. The crowd in the foyer buzzed with polite murmurs and clinking glasses. But Allison felt every eye sharpened on her, as if she were glass under a microscope. Marissa stood near the grand staircase, her posture firm, but her eyes betraying a flicker of unease. The subtle anxiety of someone managing more than just an event. Someone juggling budget cuts and rumors of leadership changes. She caught Allison's glance and quickly snapped, "Stand right there and keep quiet. We don't need your comments messing up the presentation." The command wasn't just firm, it was designed to silence. Allison's heart sank as she took up position behind the sleek serving station, arms folded tightly, as Marissa stepped forward to introduce the sustainability panel. The irony was hard to miss. Marissa stumbled over words like compostable and biosphere, drawing a few smirks from seasoned guests who were probably hoping for more than a polished show. Allison bit her lip, the sting of humiliation sharper than any snub. She knew every term correctly, had debated these topics in classrooms and meetings, but here her voice was dismissed before it even reached the room. From the corner of her eye, Allison caught the subtle but meaningful nod from Mr. Jensen, a longtime club member known for his outspoken support of environmental causes. He leaned toward her and whispered, "If only they'd listen." The words landed like a quiet anthem in a room full of polite smiles and veiled judgments. For a moment, Allison let herself breathe in the warmth of that small solidarity. Then, Marissa's voice rose again, as she wrapped up her part with practiced enthusiasm. "And remember, next week we're hosting a members' pitch hour, an opportunity to share ideas, innovate, and move Ashwood toward a greener future. Just a reminder, employees aren't eligible to submit." The words hit Allison like an invisible barrier locking tight around her hopes. The club's leadership had set a midnight deadline for submissions, 1 hour away, but Allison was excluded before she could even try. The exclusion was more than professional protocol. It felt personal. As the crowd dispersed toward the bar and lounges, Allison's fingers clenched around the edge of her notebook, the familiar worn tab reading Club Green Initiatives. Serving as a quiet rebellion against her muted role, the tension in her chest tightened. This pitch hour, this possibility for change, wasn't just a distant dream. It was a real event that could shift everything, if only she could find a way to break through the invisible limits placed on her. She knew she couldn't stay quiet forever, but for now, she had to keep still, listen, watch, and find the crack in the polished veneer that would let her voice slip through. The clock was ticking, the deadline drawing closer, and underneath the gathered guests' laughter and chatter, something fragile was taking shape, the chance Allison felt slipping through her fingers, yet still burning bright enough to hold on to. "If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward." The clatter of empty glasses and the muted hum of guests winding down filled the fading light near the club's bar area. Allison moved between tables, her arms steady but her spirit fraying. When the chance came, a fleeting pause in the chatter, she tried. "Actually, the recycling bins should be sorted with the plastics, separate from the cans." She began gently, hoping to catch Marissa's attention, without overstepping. But the response was swift and cold. Marissa cut in mid-sentence, voice sharpened by authority and maybe something more fragile. "Let the professionals handle this, Allison." The words landed like a slammed door. Heat rushed into Allison's cheeks. She clenched a tray, the weight suddenly heavier in her hands. A few nearly silent chuckles drifted through the scattered clusters of patrons. Not loud enough to call out, but sharp enough to sting. She fumbled, some glasses wobbling dangerously before steadied by a quick hand. The embarrassment, quiet but corrosive, snaked through her like a shadow. Later, in the narrow haven of the kitchen, Allison leaned against a cold stainless steel counter, trying to steady her breath. The fabled plans she had hoped to share with the club now felt like distant dreams, drowned beneath layers of dismissal and doubt. Her hands absent-mindedly traced the dog-eared pages of her Club Green Initiatives notebook. The scent of printed paper mingled with the faint aroma of garlic and rosemary from the nearby prep station. Then, a sliver of light cut through the gloom. In a corner, Chef Anita's low voice floated across the room. "Marissa didn't even file the official green proposal with management. I told her twice. Looks like it's falling apart before it started." Allison's head snapped up, eyes fixing on the chef. Anita was known for her no-nonsense candor, and this slip was more than gossip. It was a doorway. Allison's pulse quickened. If Marissa hadn't submitted that key document, then there was still space for someone else to step in. A glimmer of hope took root in the fertile ground of frustration. She clutched her notebook a bit tighter, pages packed with ideas, shaped by months of quiet observation and late nights at the cafe. These weren't just scribblings, they were a concrete blueprint waiting for the right moment. But doubt lingered, heavy as the shadows curling behind the kitchen door. Was she ready? Could she risk more humiliation for a chance at recognition? The walls pressed in, whispers of "stay in your place" echoing louder than the sizzle of the stove. Still, the thought of silence, crushed beneath her convictions, sparked a stubborn ember inside. She folded the notebook shut and took a steadier breath. Tonight wasn't over. The clock was ticking, but opportunity might still be hers to claim. The kitchen's harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Allison moved cautiously, the weight of the evening pressing down with every step. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the sturdy glass pitcher filled with water, intended to refill the dining rooms, unaware of its precarious balance on the edge of the counter. In one sudden motion, it wobbled, tipping over and spilling a cold flood onto the workspace. The crisp scent of lemon-infused water wafted sharply, mingling with the sterile smell of stainless steel and leftover herbs. Allison's fart nearly skipped as she glanced down. The cascade soaked the carefully arranged pages of her club initiative notes spread across the counter. Each sheet, meticulously written, charts and arguments laid out with early morning dedication, was now a blurred mess of blue and black ink bleeding into a gray puddle. She pressed her hands over the papers, the wetness slick beneath her palms, as if trying to hold the drowning words in place. Her breath hitched in a sharp inhale, the humid air catching in her throat. The room faded into a blur outside her tight focus. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant clatter of utensils, even the sharp rhythm of the chef's timer, all seemed muffled. A knot of despair settled in her chest, cold and unforgiving. What is this was the end of the line, her chance slipping through her fingers. Eroded not by ridicule, but by a careless accident. She leaned back against the counter, fingers clutching at the soaked edges. Time slowed as a single sheet peeled from the stack, curling at the soaked corner, revealing another slip of paper beneath it, folded neatly, typed in small, precise letters. All entries reviewed at 11:30 p.m. Late submissions won't be accepted. The deadline. The words reached her like a lifeline cast into the storm, tangible and urgent. If she could act fast, submit her proposal properly by 11:30, her ideas might not drown in this puddle after all. The lemon scent filled her senses again, oddly grounding now. Not just a sharp reminder of spilled water, but a spark of hope. Allison's fingers began to pat dry the papers, careful not to tear the soaked sheets further. Each movement wrapped around her growing resolve like a shield. The moment hung between her panic and the stirrings of determination. Fragile but fierce. Nearby, the muffled voices of staff settling at the end of their shifts floated through the kitchen walls, indifferent to the small battle unfolding. Allison glanced toward the door, hunger and exhaustion tugging at her. But something stronger held her steady. This chance, this sliver of possibility. A club's rules spelled the finish line clearly. Submit before 11:30. No exceptions. If she failed, the ideas in her notebook would remain just words. But if she succeeded, she could rewrite more than her story, maybe even the club's future. As she folded the soggy papers carefully, Allison thought of the countless hours spent dreaming of change, of quiet evenings spent jotting ideas in cafes, the hope that had brought her to this daunting place. Now, the tide was turning, just beneath the surface, waiting for her next move. When desperation meets opportunity. Who would have guessed a spilled pitcher could change everything? Allison stood by the dimly lit staff alcove, the faint hum of the air conditioner punctuating the quiet tension building inside her. Her dampened notes lay smoothed in her hands, edges curling slightly but legible, the product of late nights and stubborn hope. She glanced up as Chef Anita approached, wiping her hands on a towel, eyes tired yet resolute. The chef's usual crisp demeanor softened for a moment. "Look, Allison," she said, voice low but firm. "I'm tired of Marissa's dismissiveness. You've got good ideas. If you're serious, I'll back you. I'll make sure your proposal is time-stamped properly. No one can say you didn't submit it on time." Relief and new resolve washed over Allison in waves. Anita wasn't just offering support. She was acknowledging the truth they all knew but no one dared confront. Together, they reviewed the marked club policy posted on the alcove's wall in faded print. All staff suggestions received by midnight shall be reviewed by management, irrespective of employment status. The clause was simple, practical, and a lifeline. Company rules meant to ensure fairness, something Marissa had overlooked or purposefully ignored. But, Anita added cautiously, this could backfire. If you reveal you're more than just a server trying to pitch ideas, Marissa might see it as overstepping, and that could cost you this temp job you barely have." Her glance was sharp, a flicker of concern evident. Allison nodded, a knot tightening. The risk was real. Yet the chance to finally have her voice heard outweighed the fear. The deadline burned a hole in her mind, 11:30 p.m. sharp for submissions. There was little time. Every moment counted. Allison folded her notes carefully, slipping them into a protective folder. The weight of potential failure pressed down, but so did the possibility of change that had seemed out of reach just hours ago. Anita's quiet presence beside her was a balm. "We'll do this right. I'll see this goes directly to Mr. Reynolds in management. If it gets ignored, it's on them, not you." Allison's heart lifted with that promise. For the first time, she wasn't alone in this fight. As they moved together through the quiet corridors toward the administrative offices, Allison felt the stirrings of courage bloom. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with risk, but grounded now in a real policy, a respected ally, and the ticking clock counting down to what might become her turning point. The quiet confidence settled over her like a cloak. Now it wasn't just about ideas scribbled in a worn notebook. It was about standing firm, proof in hand, that fairness deserved a chance. The grand room fell nearly silent as the spotlight shifted from the assembled guests to Allison Price. Marissa, standing tall behind the podium, paused mid-gesture, her confident smile faltering just slightly. The clinking of glasses and low conversations came to a hush as Allison stepped forward, smoothing the battered leather notebook in her hands. Her heart hammered, but her voice held steady, clear and deliberate. "Excuse me," she said softly but firmly. The words slicing through the polished atmosphere. Guests turned, eyebrows lifting in surprise. Some whispered, others simply stared. Allison held up the notebook and a crisp form, time-stamped proof of a before-midnight submission, laid neatly beneath plastic. "I'd like to share a proposal I submitted just a few minutes ago. It's a plan for year-round local sourcing to help reduce costs and environmental impact here at Ashwood." Eyes flicked from Allison to Chef Anita, who nodded from the back of the room. Her quiet endorsement carried weight, turning unsure glances into attentive gazes. Allison's fingers tightened around the notebook as she laid out the vision. Partnerships with local farms, menus designed around seasonal and sustainable ingredients, and waste reduction strategies. Each point resonated through the room, like a whispered promise for practical, meaningful change. Marissa's face tightened. The defiant gleam in Allison's eyes was not what she expected tonight. The event organizer's hauteur slipped, replaced by a flicker of unease that didn't go unnoticed. She straightened, but no longer commanded the room as before. The balance was shifting. A murmur rose among the guests, a ripple of intrigue and endorsement weaving through their ranks. Whispers of, "That actually makes sense," and "Too bad it took someone like her to see it," filtered through polished conversations. Allison's quiet confidence grew as the initial shock faded. She kept her voice even, answering a tentative question about budget concerns with data from her notes. The same data Marissa had overlooked. The taste of vindication was tempered by humility. This was not about proving someone wrong, but about moving forward together. Across the room, Allison glimpsed the subtle shift. Marissa's poised mask cracked under the weight of undeniable truth. There was no malice in her eyes, just surprise and perhaps a moment of reluctant respect. This wasn't a fight, but a turning point. Chef Anita moved closer, her presence a tangible, steady anchor in the swirl of attention. The guests leaned in, some nodding, others texting quietly, already spreading word. The club's board members exchanged looks as Allison stepped back halfway. The room's energy transformed into quiet momentum. The proposal hung in the air, no longer a whispered idea, but a tangible possibility. As marveled eyes settled and the event's rhythm resumed, Allison felt a powerful current beneath her feet. Not just the courage of speaking up, but the first real steps toward change. The moment was hers, simple and profound. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. The conference room was draped in quiet anticipation as Allison stood before Mr. Reynolds, the club's director, her notebook still firmly in hand. The air held a trace of polished wood mingled with the faint scent of fresh coffee. But Allison's mind focused sharply on the moment ahead. She slid the neatly signed proposal across the gleaming oak table, eyes locked with Reynolds as she recited the staff policy aloud. All staff suggestions received by midnight shall be reviewed, regardless of employment status. The words cut through the tension like a beacon. Reynolds nodded slowly, the official documentation tucked neatly beside Allison's submission. He glanced upward at Marissa, who sat stiffly nearby, her earlier confidence replaced by a brittle calm. The director's gaze was steady and deliberate as he addressed the room. Based on this, Miss Price's proposal must be considered. Miss Price, Marissa, you will step aside from the Sustainability Committee pending further review. A ripple of murmurs passed among those present. Marissa's cheeks flushed, less with anger, more with the weight of accountability she hadn't expected. Yet there was no bitterness in her eyes, only a restrained acknowledgement of the undeniable shift. She cleared her throat and gave a short nod, the flicker of conflicted respect shimmering beneath her poised exterior. As Reynolds detailed the next steps, committee reassignment for Marissa, a formal review of the proposal, and an open invitation for Allison to join discussions, staff nearby exchanged glances charged with quiet approval. Word spread swiftly that morning. Allison Price was named the club's new sustainability advisor, her courage and persistence earning public thanks from leadership. The club's email blast carried the news, greeted by eager responses and congratulatory notes. The atmosphere in Ashwood began to shift just as Allison had hoped. Resentment softened by recognition, whispers of change turning into conversations about possibility. Even Marissa, now in a different role, sent a carefully worded message expressing her appreciation for Allison's dedication, hinting at an unexpected mentorship. Allison's heart swelled as she walked through the hallways she'd once navigated only as invisible staff. Now the sparkle in her eyes matched the club's polished surfaces. Her journey from fearful server to respected advisor wasn't just a personal victory. It was a testament to what happens when inner worth refuses to be silenced. Around her, the pieces realigned, justice, empathy, and perseverance interwoven into the fabric of Ashwood's future. In that moment, Allison knew this was only the beginning, her voice finally carrying the strength it deserved. Allison walked confidently through the polished hallways of Ashwood Country Club, her black flats making soft clicks against the marble floor. But tonight, something new adorned her chest, a small green pin, the symbol of her role as the club's first sustainability advisor. The contrast between this moment and the quiet, nervous steps she took weeks earlier felt almost surreal. She felt the weight of the pin, not as a burden, but as a beacon, a reminder of the journey from silence to voice. Her worn leather notebook, once stuffed beneath an apron and hidden from view, was now proudly displayed in her new office, its tab Club Green initiatives catching the light like a badge of honor. The pages told a story of persistence, not just ideas scribbled in haste, but plans born from quiet determination. Around her, the atmosphere seemed to shift, subtle yet undeniable. Staff and members alike adjusting their minds, opening doors that had once felt permanently closed. As Allison passed the bustling kitchen, she caught a glimpse of Chef Anita. The two exchanged a knowing smile, a conversation more profound than words. Anita's quiet support had meant the world, a steady current beneath the challenges. That smile was a salute to all the moments endured, the whispered doubts swallowed, and the courage that outshone them all. Outside her office window, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows, brushing gold across the trimmed gardens where local plants now flourished. One of Allison's first initiatives already taking root in the club's landscape. The scent of fresh greenery mingled with the crisp air, a constant, living reminder that small actions, nurtured patiently, could transform even the most rigid places. Alone for a moment, Allison touched the green pin, her fingers tracing its smooth edge. Her lesson was clear: never let circumstance silence your ideas or diminish your worth. The quiet power of perseverance stood stronger now, a guiding light for anyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. Her voice, once hushed in a crowd, now carried through meetings and halls alike, a steady force for change. As she gathered her notes, preparing for the next step, Allison knew this was only the beginning. The seed planted had grown past mere survival. It was blossoming into something enduring. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.